So we're just, we're gonna get 12 miles done here. We're over 10 miles. We try to do this almost every single day. And I do believe that this is what was missing with Linus Pauling's research in orthomolecular sciences. Ortho meaning to make right, molecular on a molecular scale or level. So he had, when he was much older, into the early 1990s, Linus Pauling was still doing research, and he was still campaigning and proselytizing that vitamin C was indeed a miracle vitamin. And just because somebody's old and they would have died and he's 93, 94 years old, it's like, well, he would have died, he's old, right? It doesn't mean that they're not killed off or silenced. So a very interesting fact is that everyone, I mean, the old guy's just talking about take vitamin C, it's good for you. And for some reason, people would say, yeah, he was a very genius, respectable physicist, right? His contributions to the peptide, amazing. But he's a kook when it comes to vitamin C. And then we find out in the late 80s and the early 90s that people were actually bought off by the pharmaceutical industry. So Dr. Rath, his partner, I'm going to say Rath. I'm thinking maybe it's Wraith, but we're going to go with Rath. I watched an interview with him. One was in German. It's really easy to put subtitles up on YouTube and read it. Don't be that lazy. There's a lot of good information out there that you can get, even with like Burkhard Heim, where you can find out about things that aren't necessarily available transposed into the English language. In fact, there's a lot. So it's a really good tool that we have. But his partner was on film saying, look, I realized my going in with him wasn't a smooth move to be able to set myself up for a lifetime. But I believe in this, and this orthomolecular science and nutrition is, right. He could see what was happening there. That there's this old man who's got all this energy, and he's excited about this vitamin C and all of the, all the benefits with high dose vitamin C, to where he's got this Stanford Research Center full time doing research on this. And of course, this leads into other high dose. I mean, that's the orthomolecular. There's a reason why it's not just vitamin C is a miracle. It's orthomolecular making it right. So you look at the pathological issues. So if you wanted to look into this, the book Heal with Amino Acids and Nutrients by Billy J. Saley is a really good place. But you see the true orthomolecular sciences and nutrition stop. It's halted. In fact, the pharmaceutical industry absorbed the moniker. They actually took on orthomolecular sciences. It's a travesty what happened to Linus Pauling, because he really had found something. But the issue is that he didn't understand how vitamin C, I think he did understand it, but he wasn't really putting together the fact that if you're going to super mega dose throughout the day, not just in one, sitting, 8,000 milligrams, 8 to 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C, you're going to do it out throughout the duration of a day, right? And build up your ability to tolerate more. Then in doing so, you're changing the mediating agents if you're not taking in an equal amount of protein or amino acids at the same time. And even more so, if there's times when you just ate, chicken breast or drank protein powder, whatever form of protein you've taken in, you got to make sure that you've got vitamin B and the main nutrients that are required, typically taking in calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron and vitamin B's complex, pyridoxine, and along with vitamin C are enough to synergize the needed production of where the vitamin C goes. So I believe that this is probably what pointed to his wife's stomach cancer, that she was probably just producing so much, she was dyspeptic all the time, probably going, I'm going to build up my tolerance. And it was just like created this acidic environment. I'm not saying that's what it was, but she lived till a relatively old age at 77 as well, right? Debatably. And died in 1984 of stomach cancer. And Linus Pauling died of prostate cancer, right? So you might just look at that and say, case closed, right? We know better now. And so when you look at the totality of orthomolecular nutrition, you have to do this super dosing, this mega dosing with protein. And on top of that, you have to look at your blood circulation. Like if you're eating these huge meals, and we know that 70 or even 80% of your blood system could just be sitting here after a large meal, right, in your stomach, where you need to be walking. Which I didn't hear him talking about in any interviews as an aspect of this, but it was the time that, in the early 90s, to prescribe exercise. It was kind of like, it was something that you kind of worked with people on, where you couldn't use it really prescriptively for the most part, right? So I believe that the answer to this, that Linus Pauling was on it, and he did all the research, and more research needs to be done as a total healing therapy, where you're not just taking in large dosages of vitamin C, but I think that's a really good one to start with and a fallback to go back onto. And I've even heard recently that if you do a PICC line, that 50,000 IUs of vitamin C is something that you can do. And he was talking about high doses as 10,000 milligrams, right? So you're talking about 5 times that amount, that higher upper level. He never experienced any toxicity or any upper limit with vitamin C. And that means if you don't have an upper limit, and pretty much everything that you can think of has an upper limit, everything does. By the way, even protein in the last few years has been, it's been determined. You'd think that they had all this information years ago, but they really don't. Money has to be, grants, and then there has to be credible scientists, and then, they really have to be not just well financed, but they have to have a good panel of scientists working on this they know what is the next item in succession to be working on. And something that I always thought is you don't want to ever overdo it on protein. That was always talked about, right, in the bodybuilding circles and so forth, that all you can do is handle the average person 30 grams, you're good. Don't overdo it. And then take in another, 30 grams a couple hours later, right? It's going to take time for your body to, and that's if it's more instantized, right? Now what they determined is that if you were to eat, so this gets back to vitamin C for a second here, is that what Linus Pauling figured out, this is many years ago, this is 30 plus years ago now, right? That he figured out that this whole idea of excess vitamin C spilling over into your urine, the highest concentration he found with like an 8-gram daily dose, was that 15% spilled over into your urine, into a person's urine. So he put that to rest, right? And the same thing's been said with protein, that you're going to get this protein spillover, right? So whether or not it's because you're in ketosis, it's the ketones, it's going to make your pee smell a little bit different. And then everyone metabolizes food differently too, right? So this is, in my opinion, this is a way to uniformly heal yourself and get back to your base metabolic homeostatic equilibrium and balance. But these studies showed that if you were to eat, say, 80 or even 100 grams of protein, that your body would take the time over several hours to use every bit of that your body didn't waste protein. So in other words, when you eat this big, huge steak, and then you're not hungry for the rest of the day, right? And the same thing holds true with casein, right? It's a slower digesting, slower metabolizing protein, right? And for some reason, they charge more for casein, and it's actually cheaper. So, like when you eat cottage cheese, you're getting in casein. You're better off just eating cottage cheese than you are paying the high prices on for protein, casein protein. And some people think, oh, it tastes so good, but when you start adding it up, you're like, I'm paying how much? Yeah, it used to be the cheaper one. They sold it right next to the cheaper whey concentrate. Eras change. People that weren't alive at a certain time don't really have any reference, right? And then you'll see even the book Heal with Amino Acids and Nutrients that I used to hand out for free because they were only like $2 or $3 for copies of these, right? That you could find on Amazon. They're like $50, $55 on average. The cheapest you can find it is around 40, and you're still going to be paying for shipping and everything else. So, and it's a very thin book, but it teaches you how certain amino acids group, right? And how really what you start to see is there are more anabolic influences, and then there are more immune system bolstering influences there, where you have cysteine, cysteine, proline, glycine, and many other, like glutamine, many other conditionally essential amino acids that you literally have to go into this fasted or starving sort of state, which I've found that eating chicken breast, you're starving after you eat chicken breast when you've been on nothing but protein for 3 days. If anything, it gives you a little bit of this satiety, but you never feel bogged down. You don't have any fat in your gut. You don't have any carbohydrates in your gut. And so what I think that Linus Pauling left out of this was that when he was talking about superdosing, he was missing the supercompensation effects with eating large amounts of really high quality, nutrient dense organic foods, especially when you're coming out of a complete and total depleted state, right? To where your body, your cells are going to suck up 200 or 300% of what they typically would, just rapidly delivered to your cells. Well, when you're taking vitamin C, you even get more of that hydrating effect, right? So you get this more efficacy, more delivery along with the protein, the amino acids, right? So I believe that the orthomolecular nutrition plan has been blocked for a reason. That Dr. Rath, his partner at one time, identified the SS influences of this, that those programs like Project Paperclip and so forth, that shit was brought right over here to the US, right? And the same type of war on people to produce a slave class, to produce docile people that then would more than sign up for or be required to be subservient to taking such things as the, like in Christianity, they refer to this as the mark of the beast. Some people called it the chip over the years, but it really is this Neuralink program, right? Where you have nanoid signaling transduction going on in your body, where if you were to take pills, or they would put it in food, to where these nano robots would be able to travel through your system, assisting with digesting, assisting with localized in certain organs, to be able to parlay, relay, delay certain informations in the forms of, glucagon or insulin, as an example, and even more so to take over thought processes, to where when you're looking at rate propagation signals traveling at 220 miles per hour from node of Ranvier to node of Ranvier, that's not very fast. What if you could create a superconductive system where people would be able to move so rapidly? And then we get into the fact that it's like, well, then now you're talking about a completely different nervous system. And then when you begin to look at the so-called alien grays, which are more often these days identified as having this black skin, right? Like the grays may have been a uniform that they were wearing, because what they've been described as is smelling very badly like sulfur. So you're talking about a completely different metabolic function. And I think that these are hybrid humans. I think they actually developed hybrid humans that didn't require very much. They could go through long forms of travel through space or interdimensionally or whatnot, right? Whatever the fuck they're doing. And to be able to handle going underwater, right? And that their brains and their eyes were bigger because they were processing more information. And essentially they're just like a nervous system, right? That their body and their brain, their mind were kind of like one, right? But you also see this cybernetic control where they're all linked in together, right? So this shit's very serious, and obviously we're getting nothing out of it. And nobody that speaks the truth, like what I'm saying right now, goes right into the algorithms and the airwaves, even though I'm just doing this on my cell phone. It's always linked into the central system. Everything is. So, orthomolecular nutrition and sciences, it's very real. I don't think you would have seen the pandemic play out the way that it did. I think that it would have actually put Fauci and all these liars to shame. But they were all paid off by the pharmaceutical industries. They were all promised plots in the new world. They know exactly what's going on. They all agree upon taking disinformation, brainwashing educations that talk about how, from a eugenics standpoint, about how people are less than them, that they're always going to do the same thing, that their morality, it really is the slave morality, right? And that the higher ups, the elites, have a better use case for them, that they know what your average person needs better than the average person does because they see us just as products.